Remember those endless summer days that felt like they just last forever? Sun rays kiss your skin. Grass tickles your toes as you bite into the creamy popsicle melting in your hand. Pure, unbothered bliss. Capture more sun-drenched memories with the Orange Vanilla Dream Hydration Multiplier from Liquid IV. This nostalgic vanilla flavor with notes of candied orange can help keep you hydrated while savoring your favorite golden hour moments. No matter how hot your summer gets, just one stick of Liquid IV and 16 ounces of water hydrates you better than water alone. It's 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, with 8 vitamins and nutrients for refreshing on-the-go hydration. Live your summer dream with Liquid IV. Tear, pour, live more. Go to liquidiv.com and get 20% off your first order with code INDULGE20 at checkout. That's code INDULGE20 at liquidiv.com.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to this, our 4th episode of Pammy Out Loud. Hi, I'm your host, Pammy, and I am coming to you. Where am I coming to you from? Well, it's the exact question that our son Bobby asks me every morning when he calls. Wait for it. Yes, that's how he puts it, because he never knows if we're in town or out of town, and sometimes I'm not even sure where I am until I check the time zone. But today I'm coming to you live from Colorado Springs. I'm recording, I suppose, in Colorado Springs. And I am excited to share with you some of the things that are what we have learning to say yes to. Today's episode is really about how do you say yes in retirement. So I've been thinking a lot about this as we talk about transitions in life that happen. And I recently worked on an article about this concept of life transitions and how some of them are fun and some of them are a little bit more challenging, right? You don't necessarily take them on, but you have to go through them anyway. Retirement actually is one of those things that we are working on. The challenge in retirement is you've got, first of all, 2 people, usually, if you're in a marriage or partnership, trying to figure out what does the next maybe as many years as we've already had together look like, right? My husband and I, we've been married 38 years, and, we both are blessed to still have our mothers alive. So the concept that we could share another 30 years together is very real. And most of those years are going to be spent as retired people. There are so many choices that you have, and it is always a little daunting because, you go through your life and a lot of times there's not a plan. You're just kind of putting one step in front of the other as you walk this path, and you're raising your children and doing everything you need to do and going to work. But you don't really think about what are we going to do when we're done with the working at end of life. And so this is a topic that Brian and I didn't really talk that much about. And then one day, kind of out of the blue, he said to me, "Hey, I think we should buy a second home in Colorado Springs." And I looked at him like he had 3 heads. We had never talked about buying a second home. And more significant, we'd never even visited Colorado Springs. So here we were having this conversation, and he's like, "I've given it some thought, and I think that we should buy a place in Colorado Springs." Now, I will tell you, however, this was a much better plan sounding to me than the previous one he'd had, which he would occasionally, I fall asleep much earlier than he does, but he'll get a thought in his mind sometimes, and he'll have to wake me up and say, and one night, this is what we got. He woke me up to tell me, "I have this great idea, Pam. I think that we should buy a Sprinter van and travel around the U.S. and visit all of our family and friends and national parks and do all this thing." And I'm laying there half asleep with my eyes bug-eyed, and I looked up at him and he says to me, "Baby, it'll change our marriage." And I thought, you better believe it'll change our marriage. And not for the good, I don't think. That plan fortunately fell by the wayside as soon as we took a look inside of a Sprinter RV and realized there was room for either his golf clubs or me in the passenger's seat. And I didn't think that was one I was going to win. So fortunately, that one came to pass. But this Colorado Springs thing showed up on our plate, and we started talking about, okay, how about a second home? What do we want to do this? You know, what's interesting about retirement, I got to be careful, is that you there's limitless possibilities. And it's really fun right now because I'm seeing a lot of my friends go through this of deciding what they want to do. Some of them are choosing the travel route. Our dear friends Dennis and Jennifer are in Europe now, and they're traveling all over the place and having a wonderful time. We have other friends who own a boat down in the British Virgin Islands, and they're sailing as frequently as they can. We have friends, my cousin and her husband have taken to the RV life and have embraced that fully, traveling all across the United States. Now they got a bigger one, which I think they keep getting a bigger one. I keep thinking of that Jaws line, you know, we need a bigger boat. That's my cousin and her husband. They went from one RV and one size truck to getting a bigger RV, a pull trailer. I guess I'm not sure what the right expression is. I'll have to ask her. But then they had to get a bigger truck to pull the bigger RV. And then they got another bigger RV and needed another bigger truck. And now they've just cashed all that in and bought one of those all-inclusive buses, right? So it's kind of fun to see what they're doing. And, you know, you have all of these things that you can choose when you retire. But how do you come up with what it is you want to do? And how does that merge with what your partner wants to do? So you also have to realize, I think, that with every yes, there's a no. You can do multiple things, but, you know, you have to start thinking about, when I choose this, what other things am I not going to get to do? By choosing a second home, we are tying up our money in that way, which means that we can't necessarily go on every vacation that we get invited on, or travel like some of our friends are enjoying doing. So, you know, when you have that second home, that becomes the vacation spot, right? And so when he first broached the subject with me, I was kind of surprised, and I found myself thinking, is this really what I want to do? Now, interestingly, we ended up, it is something that both sets of our parents did. My mother and dad were living in Chicago when they bought their first home down in Horseshoe Bay, and this was in the 80s. And they went back and forth for a while before they finally retired to Horseshoe Bay. Brian's mother and dad were living in West Des Moines, Iowa, and purchased a condo down in Naples, Florida. And so they were going back and forth between wintering in Florida and summering up in Iowa. So it was a very common thing. That was something we understood and knew as we'd seen our parents do it, but it wasn't ever something that we had talked about. So my first question was, why Colorado Springs? And, Brian's kind of an interesting, you have to kind of understand my husband to appreciate this. Brian thinks about things in very great detail before he broaches the subject. I tend to, I'm more, I like to say I'm a microwave and he's a slow cooker. I get an idea and it pops out of my mouth. He gets an idea and he marinates on it and thinks about it for a long time. And that had been the case with Colorado Springs. And while I saw his idea come from out of the blue, it was actually something that he had spent a great deal of time thinking about. So for me, while he'd gone from A to Z, in his head, he'd gone A to B to C to D to E to F to G. But he didn't get me up to speed, which was kind of a problem. And so I do like to say, it's also important to include your partner in those conversations as you're marinating and as you're marinating and mulling over those topics. So anyway, let's go back to how did we come up with Colorado? Because that is one of the most frequently questions we get is how did we choose Colorado Springs out of the myriad of places that we could have selected? And it comes down to several things. But my husband, I'll start with when we were raising our children. We would bring our boys up to Colorado for an annual ski vacation while they were growing up. And we bebopped around several different resorts here. And I always viewed Colorado as a winter destination. It wasn't something we ever did in the summertime. And we had wonderful, great family vacations also with friends in the Colorado mountains. And I just really enjoyed it here. But I didn't think of it as a summertime. A few years ago, though, one of my husband's high school friends, shout out Jeff Grismore, invited us to come to his place out in Salida, Colorado. Now, Salida is a little mountain town on the Arkansas River, and Salida means exit in Spanish, I believe. And I learned that the town was named after the fact that it's the exit of the Arkansas River tributaries or something like that. Anyway, he has a place out there, and we went to visit him in the summertime several years ago. And Salida is this wonderful little mountain town. The population is maybe 3,500, 4,000. I'm not sure, but it's pretty small, and it's high up in the mountains. Everybody there we saw was active. Every single person was doing things, whether they were 95 or 5, whether it was some high adventure like extreme whitewater kayaking or just simple little hikes. You saw people on mountain bikes, hiking the trails, paddling in the rivers, all these things. And I fell in love with it. And I thought it was just such a quaint little town. And I was particularly struck by the fact that there were no mosquitoes in the summertime. Listen, those of you in Texas know, particularly the humid climates of Austin and even more so in Houston, man, those mosquitoes will eat you alive. Eat you alive. So here we go. We get this, we decided we visit out there, and I just think this place is magical. And so I said to Brian, well, I like the idea of Colorado, but I want to live in a little mountain town like Jeff does. And I envisioned myself with my journal and my cup of coffee, sitting in a little cafe, writing poetry and journaling about my inner thoughts, wearing my flip-flops and just having this, and my Patagonia. And I just had this vision that that's how it was going to be. And when he said Colorado Springs, I thought, I don't know, that's a big city. That's a big difference. But Brian pointed out, he said, listen, and his phrase became, I want it to be the easy button. I want it to be the easy button. What does that mean? Well, he had already taken into some consideration in that of his thought process when I say the ABCDs. One of the things he said is, Pam, as we get older, we need to think about healthcare. And if we're up in a little mountain town, we're not going to have the resources available to us. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty good. And then the second thing he mentioned is altitude. We're used to living at almost sea level down in Austin. And, you start getting into the mountains, and altitude really takes effect on people, particularly as you get older. It takes your breath away. It takes a while to adjust to it when visitors come. And it's a very real thing, having that altitude hangover kind of feeling of you get a headache, you don't feel good, you can even throw up. And we've had visitors that have faced that. Not so bad in Colorado Springs, but the higher altitudes you get, the more you have to deal with that. So Brian had already taken that into consideration, and Colorado Springs sits at about 6,500 feet above sea level, so a little higher than Denver, but not as high as Breckenridge, where you can really, really feel that altitude. So that was something else. The other thing that he said was, and probably, I'm not going to say probably, definitely the most important issue for my husband, is he wanted to be able to join a country club, a place that he would want to play golf regularly. And you can't, when you're up in little mountain towns, the country clubs are not there, right? And to get on and you can't just you just can't come in and play the big golf courses when you want to, right? They're private. So we had to find some place that he could play golf, and it would be some place that he would enjoy playing golf, and we could afford to belong to the club. So he'd already done some research and had found a couple places in the Colorado Springs area that met that criteria. And then the final thing, and this was probably the biggest selling point to me, was the fact that it had to have easy access. You didn't want to have planes, trains, and automobiles to get to where you're going. If we're going to go back and forth between Austin and Colorado Springs or whatever second home we had, you don't want to have to fly to Denver, rent a car, drive a few hours. And we didn't want to. Some people want to, but that wasn't going to be it for us. We wanted to be able to make it easy to get on a plane and be here within a morning, or just a few hours to be back to be one place or the other. We wanted that to be for our children, our friends, and our family. We wanted them to all be able to engage with us and to be able to do it without it being a big ordeal to come visit, or even for us to get to where we wanted to go. So he had already come up with all of these things, his ABCDs, and it started to sound pretty good, but I still had that basic question, which was, maybe we should visit it. So we had started talking about it, and we decided to come out and visit Colorado Springs, and we stayed first at the Garden of the Gods Resort, which is eventually it is the club that we joined. But he came out here so we could stay there and he could play the golf course and see if this was a course that he wanted to belong to, and loved it. We fell in love with it. We went out with a realtor that first year that we were out here. I think it was in 2021. I'm going to lose track. 2021. We came out here and we went around with a realtor, and we visited the neighborhood that we ultimately ended up buying in, and we just decided that, we started to see all those things. I started to see all those things that were important to me. I saw active people out walking their dogs, playing pickleball, tooling around in golf carts, going to the club, going to the pool, busy doing things and being outside. Additionally, besides, Brian wanted to live on a golf course, and I decided that if we were going to live in Colorado, I wanted a view of the mountains. So those became pretty important criteria for us. We weren't planning on buying it for a few years at that point. And so we came back, and then we'd only spent a weekend up here at that time. And then the following year in 22, we decided, we should really get maybe have a 3-week stay, get an Airbnb. We'll come out here and stay. And so we can get an opportunity to get a feel for the grocery stores and the downtown environment and some of the other things that would come into play. So the following summer of 22, we had a place booked out here in Colorado Springs and an Airbnb. And we also had several friends come out and stay with us and share the experience too. Our very dear friends, Dennis and Jennifer, came out here, and Jennifer used to be a realtor in Austin, and she's like, let's go look at places together. Now, we were not planning on buying anything at this point. It was just going to be, let's go explore and look and see what's on the market, and what we can get for the money. So the first day that the four of us went out, we went to a townhouse that we really liked. Actually, a townhouse in the exact townhouse development that we ended up getting. But we went since we saw this one and went home, and we just started talking about it, and it immediately sold. It was the next day, it was off the market. We were going to go back and look at it again. No, it was gone. And we started to learn, these places go really fast when the ones that open up with mountain views. The next day, we go out and we go see this other townhouse, and we walk in, and I'm like, the very first thing is, wow, look at this view. we had the back of the house has this fantastic glassed vaulted ceiling view of Pikes Peak and also the golf course. So it met both of our criteria. I want to tell you for a second, I just have to pause a minute and tell you about Pikes Peak, because Pikes Peak, I just get all ooey gooey about Pikes Peak. If you don't know this, Pikes Peak is called America's Mountain. And the reason for that is sometime in the 1800s, a woman by the name of Catherine Bates, who was a teacher at Wellesley College out in Boston, she came to Colorado Springs on some type of, I don't know, teaching adventure. I'm not exactly sure what brought her out here, but she came out here, and she and several of her friends went up Pikes Peak. And I think it was in I don't want to say covered wagons. I'm not sure that's right. It must have been. I don't know. But they got to the top of Pikes Peak, and from the top of Pikes Peak, she was inspired to write America the Beautiful. She came down from the mountain, and she said she wrote it in about 15 minutes. And you know that beautiful line of Purple Mountain's majesty. If you've been on top of Pikes Peak, you see what the heck she was talking about. It is awe-inspiring. It is so beautiful. And there is something that just touches my soul when I sit each morning and stare at that mountain and think about the rich history that it has. There is so much more to Pikes Peak to love. They do this race up Pikes Peak, and if you've ever driven it, there are not guardrails. There are not guardrails. And yet, I think we drove it one time, and I think it took us a little over, like maybe an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. I'm not entirely sure that's right, but about that to get to the top. Well, they do this race every year up Pikes Peak, and they do it start to finish in like 15, 17 minutes, something like that. Maybe it's even faster than that. I'm going to have to look that up now that I'm saying that. But it's something. It is really, really something to watch it and to imagine it. And I think there's been some pretty spectacular crashes as well in the history. There's also this, they have this tradition on New Year's Eve. There's a group of hikers that hike up Pikes Peak, which is one of the 14ers in Colorado, and they go up Pikes Peak hiking up or packing fireworks on their back to set off fireworks on New Year's Eve. So it's a really cool thing too. There's just so many things about Pikes Peak that I just am enamored of. I don't know. I love that place. So anyway, back to our story, we see this spectacular view, and the townhouse looked a little dated. It had that kind of 1990s vibe to it, but the bones were really good, and we really liked it. And we went out to dinner with the Harts, and we were sitting there talking about, should we make an offer? Like we were not planning on doing this, and it's happening so fast, and we're really excited. And I'm looking at Jennifer saying, tell me what's wrong with this place. I need your professional eyes to tell me what's wrong with this deal. Should we make this offer? And we're really caught up in this momentum. And we are sitting at the club, and we're like, I think we're going to make an offer. And we can't wait because we hear that there's likely to be another offer coming in on the place. And, we are caught up in that momentum, right? And I am feeling very excited, but I'm also feeling very nervous because one, we had just kind of decided that, I'm okay with, we should buy a place in Colorado Springs. And two, we really weren't going to buy it at that point. And all of a sudden, we found a place and we're going to make an offer. And I'm kind of tripping out because this is also going way ahead of the schedule. We were still thinking a couple more years before we do this, right? So we hadn't had much time alone together. We'd been with the Harts the whole time, our friends, and we were sitting at the grill at the golf course talking, and should we make an offer? How much should the offer be? All of those good things. And I said to Brian, I need to talk to you privately. I felt like I'm caught up in this momentum, and I needed to have this conversation with my husband to just, okay, check ourselves and see where we're at, right? So we left the hearts at the grill, and we just walked outside and started talking. And I'm very emotional, and I'm crying. I start crying, right? Like, this is all happening so fast, and I don't know, and this really, this is all kind of a new idea. And he says, he takes my hands and he says, Pam, I think this is the right thing to do. And I said, I am, like I said, tears are streaming down my face at this point. And I say to him, I just want my parents to be proud of the decisions that I'm making with regards to spending lots of money like this. Now, that probably sounds weird. I'm 63 years old, and but my parents, it's very important to me that I have a lot of things. I want them to approve of the things that I do, and I respect them a great deal. And I don't know. It was just kind of a weird moment of like where, and he grabbed my hands and he said, Pammy, he said, this is exactly what your mother and dad did. They bought a place on a golf course. Your parents would love this place. And I looked at him and I said, okay, I just really wish I had a sign. I need a sign from God that this is the right thing to do. But okay. So I took a deep breath and I turned to go back into the grill, and Brian goes, something catches his eye, and he goes out to the patio of the grill where he starts engaging with a family that's sitting at a table out there. And I go back into Dennis and Jennifer, and we're talking and trying to, sort out what the next steps were. And I look up, and Brian is standing out there chatting it up like he does with these people. And then it looked to me to be a couple maybe in their 70s with their daughter, and then likely her daughter. That was probably maybe 10, right? So it appeared to be a 10-year-old mom and probably mom's parents. That was my assessment of the people that he's talking to. And I'm like, well, who is he talking to? And what's all that about? And then I see, emotions for me to come on outside. So I go out there, and he said, Pam, and he introduces me to these people. And he said, when we turned to come back into the clubhouse, I noticed that there was a burnt orange golf cart sitting on the back at the grill with a longhorn on the back. And so it had caught his eye, and he had walked around to find out whose golf cart it was, being the good longhorns that we are. And he started visiting with this couple who owned the golf cart, and it was the older couple at the table. And he noticed that the gentleman had on a vest with a golf club Escondido, which is a club that's very close to to Horseshoe Bay, where my folks actually live. We start talking, and he said, it turns out that this gentleman, they used to live in Horseshoe Bay, and he had played golf several times with my daddy, and his wife, who was sitting there, had played bridge with my mother many times. And my mother had actually gone to a baby shower for the 10-year-old girl that was sitting at that table. My mother had attended a baby shower when that couple had lived in Horseshoe Bay, that had been for that girl that was sitting there at the table. Okay, I thought that was my sign from God. I'm just going to say. I thought, okay, I wanted a sign, and that was my sign. Somehow, this group of people that had so many connections to my parents that were just randomly sitting on the back patio of the grill when we're making this decision. Even I thought that was a lot of signals. I can believe it. So with that, I felt really reassured that this was the decision. We made the offer, and it all fell into place. One of the things I will tell you, though, that caught me is I did say to Brian at one point, I said, backing up to this, how do you make the decision? And there's two people involved in how are we going to spend our retirement? I did say to Brian, this is your dream. This isn't my dream. I had always thought in my head that I would move closer to where my children and my grandbaby and future grandbabies would be, and not further away from it. So when we are making this choice, I am feeling a little bit like this is his dream, not my dream. And the other thing and I said to Brian, I need you to make me a promise that we can revisit this. And I promise you that I will commit to throwing everything I can into making this place my home, and I will engage in the community, and I will find all the different ways I can to enjoy the community and embrace the environment. But I want you to agree to this, that we can, and we'll set a time frame of 3 to 5 years. And in that point, we're going to revisit, is this the thing is this what we thought it was going to be? Are we enjoying it the way we thought we were going to? And if we don't, that we will change course at that point. This was really important to me, y'all, because my husband doesn't change course very, very willingly. He is more like, kind of like those big ships in the night. Like when it's time to change directions, you can't just say, okay, never mind, we're going to do something different. That is not how Brian Walsh works. When he gets committed to something, he stays committed, even when maybe there's a good way to pull out. And I'm going to just tell you my story. I think about back when we were living in Indianapolis and we had this master bedroom, and I wanted to repaint it. And I'm not very good at picking out paint. I should just tell you all that. But I went and I picked out this paint. I wanted it to be basically white, but just a tinge of pink to it, right? Just a little pink. Well, I went and bought the paint, and it looked pretty good in the can. But Brian started painting the wall, and lo and behold, or as our friend Rick Ochoa says, load in the hoe. It comes up on the wall like a giant bottle of Pepto-Bismol has blown up. Now, we're only about 3 square feet into the painting project when I walk into the room and think, holy crappuccino, we cannot do this. This is offensive even if it was a baby girl's baby room. So I said to Brian, oh, honey, I do not like it. And he's like, too late. I'm going to paint the room this color. I've already started. This is what we're going to do. And so guess what? We lived with that Pepto-Bismol pink master bedroom up until it was time for us to put that house on the market a year and a half later. And it was a little rough, let's just say. But I have learned, sometimes when Brian makes a decision, we just kind of keep going down that path. And so I wanted to make sure in this point that we would take a minute and take a breath and at least agree that we would have a set time limit that we could revisit the issue. And if it wasn't what we wanted it to do, that we could then change it and make a different choice at that point. So we got the place. We bought the place faster than we intended to do it. And in the fall of 22, we purchased our townhouse, and we've been busy remodeling it and updating it. And it has become everything I've wanted and more. I have to say that the community here has been so welcoming and inclusive and wonderful. And I have learned so many lessons on how you build community when you start over. So we'll be talking more about that in future episodes and how I learned how to create community. But I want to tell you this. Colorado Springs is so fun. There's something about it that reminds me of Austin in the way back days before we got so crowded. And, I always hate the people that do this. Like they move to Austin and then decide nobody else should be able to. So I'm not one of those people, but yeah, Austin has gone through some growing pains for sure. As I've been there since 1980 when I went to college, with a few years gone to Boston and Indianapolis, but it's been my home for 40 plus years, right? 45 years almost. And I love that place, but I've seen it undergo a lot of change. There's something to me about Colorado Springs that reminds me of early days in Austin. And there's a vibrancy and just a fun pace. And I love the fact that when they talk about traffic, I think, oh, come to Austin if you think there's this traffic. I laughed because I went and bought something across town when we first got here, across Colorado Springs, and it was a big mirror, and I was putting it in the back of our Suburban, and as we're leaving the store, the clerk said, okay, you feel okay about how this is in the back of your car? And I said, oh yeah, I don't have that far to go. And they go, where are you going? And I told him where our house was, and he says, oh my gosh, that's all the way across town. And I was thinking, it's 25 minutes from here. I can barely get to H-E-B in Austin, Texas in 25 minutes. So all things are relative, but I love Colorado Springs, and I am so excited to be here. And, one of the things that was also a very persuasive thing for me when I was sort of dragging my heels about if we should do this or not, Brian said to me, we ain't getting any younger. Yeah. And if we want to enjoy Colorado and all that it has to offer and be active and explore and hike and get out enjoy the outside elements that as much as possible, you don't know how long you have until there's a hitch in your giddy up, so to speak. So I want to wrap this up by talking to you about a couple of things that I think that it's important to, is that, there's a lot of lessons that I've learned from this experience of picking Colorado Springs. And first and foremost is start talking out loud about what it is that you want to do in your life. Start especially with your partner. What is your dream for how you want your retirement years to look like? Start throwing that around the table and engage in that conversation. Recognize, too, that for every yes, there is some no's. When you choose to buy a place, second home, you are going to be saying no to some of the other options that you can do in life. That's not bad. I mean, when you say yes to being married to one person, you're saying no to all the others, right? So there is good and bad in that, but saying yes means that there are some saying no's to things. It is such a gift. There are endless possibilities for how you can spend your time and your community and your time, your money, your energy, and your resources. Choose wisely and begin to talk about it out loud. What do you want to say yes to? That's the question I want you to ponder. And I invite you, get on my social media. Check me out on Facebook, the Pammy Out Loud Facebook group. I want to engage y'all in the questions. What do you think about retirement? And what kinds of things do you want to do? Start talking it out loud, because gritting your teeth, gals and guys, gives you TMJ. Peace out, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. Until next time.